Thanks, Katie. Good morning, everyone, on this beautiful Florida day full of sunshine out here at our biological stand in Central Florida. Today, I want to do something a little bit different than we've done before. We always have guests on, but this time we have guests coming from two different places. And I wanted to be live out there, but the internet connection isn't so great where they are. So I'm still here at Archbold, but we have videos that will help send us to their locations. And Maya and Liz will be on later for the Q&A. So here I am out in the Florida scrub. And if you're seeing this behind me, you would probably say, oh yeah, well, that looks like a nature preserve. I'll even turn my camera around. You can see how pretty it is out here. Let's see. I have my wide angle lens on, which is really great for shots like this. And if I said to you, oh, I'm going to show you a picture of nature, this might be what you picture in your head. It's kind of what I picture in my head. But let's think about that for a minute. What is nature? Picture it in your head. And if you've got your keyboard there, feel free to put it in the chat too. When I think about nature, this is what I picture. Maybe you think of trees. Maybe think of the ocean or rivers or ponds. What do you picture? I have a book here on the habitats in Florida. This is a really nice book here. Florida Habitats. This is the Central Florida one. And right on the cover here is the Florida scrub. If I can open this with one hand since I have my selfie stick in the other hand. Here we go. There's a nice picture there. The lighting isn't too great. Here we go. Maybe you can see that a little bit better. There's a nice picture there. And what I'm seeing here is, yeah, trees, habitat, all kinds of cool animals. You know, there's something that I don't see in any of these pictures. And it's a great book, but there is something missing from these habitats. Anybody think of what's not in this book? And most of the time when you get a book about habitats, this important thing is missing. That's people. Sometimes we forget that people are also part of nature. We are on this planet, along with all of those other wild animals and stuff. There's people out here too. And we can't forget that. When we think of nature, sometimes we think of just as nature as something separate from us. Nature's out there. I'm in my house over here. I'm in this building over here. And we're totally separate. But there's another word that's really important, and that's conservation. And if you ask someone what conservation means, they'll give you all kinds of different answers. But kind of what they all get at is making sure that we can protect nature so that nature is still in good shape for the future, for future generations. I think of it as thinking win-win, making sure we have what we need to survive and what nature has for nature to be healthy and survive as well. So when we think of different nature places, we usually think of places maybe a little bit like Archbold where there's a nature trail. But what about places where people work, like a farm, a cattle ranch, places like that? Those have a lot of wildlife on them too. So that's what I want to talk about today. How it's not just nature preserves where we don't do anything except for just have nature out there and a couple of trails. Let's think about how important other places are that try to balance the needs of people and the needs of nature. So we'll put on our first video here. I filmed this with a selfie stick a year or so ago, and we're going to watch the first maybe 4 minutes of this going to Buck Island Ranch. And this is where Maya works. So we'll see Maya's video after this one. But let's watch the first 4 minutes.
I am here at the entrance to Buck Island Ranch, Archbold's 10,500 acre working cattle ranch. It's a ranch, it's a nature preserve, and it's a biological field station. On the sign, you can see it says 2S. That's the Buck Island brand. It stands for Two Sons, the two brothers that started this ranch back in the 1940s. Buck Island is one of my favorite places anywhere, and I'm excited to show you around. Let's go. One of the first things you notice when you visit the ranch is the landscape. It is very flat. It's open. There's not a lot of trees. You do see cabbage palms in the distance and some live oaks. You also notice that it's not filled with cows. We have about 3,000 mama cows here, and we have calves, we have bulls, but there's a lot of space for them to move around in, and we move them from pasture to pasture. It's not that this is on a especially environmental ranch. It's just a typical ranch for this part of Florida, and that's how they work. Lots of space. So they are agricultural, but they are also wonderful natural areas for panthers and bears and all kinds of other critters to move through. I want to get to one of our carbon eddy flux towers, but it seems the only way I can figure out how to get there by walking is to go through this ditch right here. So I am gonna do it, all for you. I'm walking through the ditch. I'm walking through the ditch. I hope an alligator doesn't bite me as I walk through the ditch. I now realize there are more ditches on the way to the tower than I thought, but we are going to make it there. This is ditch number 2 behind me. We made it to the tower. This is one of Buck Island's 5 carbon eddy flux towers. These are like super duper weather stations. You can see they look a little bit like something that you would put on Mars. They are taking regular weather data like the temperature and rainfall, but they're also measuring greenhouse gas emissions, specifically carbon dioxide. We put them in different parts of our property in order to see how our land management practices, like how many cows we put out there, will affect the greenhouse gases. They can measure whether the carbon dioxide is going up into the atmosphere and we're producing it, or whether it's being taken in by the plants and being sequestered in the ground. So they're measuring both of those things. Pretty cool, right? So glad I got to show you that. Now I'm gonna head back across the field through the 5 ditches to my vehicle and see what else we can find. At the end of our long driveway, we come to some offices and buildings. There's a pasture with horses and a beautiful lake right here. These buildings behind me are actually houses. We do have cowboys and researchers living here and raising their families here. It's a reminder that sustainability is not just about the environment, but it's also about the economy and culture and families. At Buck Island Ranch, we are trying to support all 3. Now,
all right, thanks, Katie. We can turn this one off. That gives you just a little peek into what the ranch looks like if you were going to visit the ranch and go down that main driveway there. But what about the different kinds of science that happens there? What does it look like when a researcher has an idea for a project? What does their actual day look like? Katie, can you introduce our next video?
Hi, awesome. Yeah, so the next video is going to feature Maya doing some research on soil. So while we think of living things and environments a lot, there's also abiotic factors. Um, and soil is one of those. So we're going to check out how she's looking at nutrients in our soil. I'll share.
I also just want to mention that Katie made this film. So she went to the ranch and filmed Maya, and she made our second film we're going to watch too about Liz. Katie, it looks like things are not working so well. I'm playing the videos.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it's not loading. So I will try to pull that up again to have it
Here,
ready.
I can, do you want a minute and I can, I'll show something fun out here and then we'll come back to you.
Awesome, sounds good.
All right, so I am walking right now. Normally I walk while the videos are playing, so you get behind the scenes look. I have a tripod, and then on a bag on the tripod is my Wi-Fi, mobile Wi-Fi. So you're seeing behind the scenes, but I want to walk over here because there's a flower blooming, and it makes me happy because it means that we're at the end of winter into spring, where we start to get beautiful flowers. This is called a pawpaw, and I'm gonna get down low here. We have these beautiful pawpaw flowers. They're cream colored. Come over here too. Beautiful cream colored, and they actually do make a fruit that you can eat. It looks kind of like a pear, but smaller and lopsided. I'm going to turn my camera around so we can look at it a little closer. And maybe there are some insects visiting it too, we can check out. So here we go. I can see a little drop of water. And who is that? Looks like we've got a beetle friend. And beetles are known, there we are. Beetles are known to be pollinators of these. In fact, like a lot of flowers, these have a smell to them. And some people say that the smell is a little bit like rotting flesh or rotting food or something like that. And it attracts beetles like this one. We'll just leave you alone there, little buddy, and let's see if there's another one we can look at. This one is another one. We'll come up close. There we go. Beautiful. When we do these shows, a lot of them we've done, let me switch this back around. Most of the episodes that we've done have been in the winter, and there aren't many flowers blooming in the winter. It's winter time. It's the dry season here. So it's really fun to see. We're almost done with our series. Next month is our last one. And we have some of these spring flowers already coming out, letting us know that winter is coming to its end. So beautiful pawpaw flowers. All right, Katie, how are our videos going?
I think we should be all good to go.
All right, good luck.
Hi, I'm Maya, and I work at Buck Island Ranch, where I help study how nature and agriculture interact in a field we call agroecology. So if you've learned about plants in school, you've probably learned that they need nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, and here in Central Florida, the plants have adapted to need more nitrogen than phosphorus. 20 years ago, here at Buck Island Ranch, scientists started a study where they were adding fertilizer or extra nutrients to different plots of land to see how it would affect the plants. And my project here is looking at those plots to see, can we still see the evidence of the fertilizer in the soil 10 years after the project has stopped? If plants have too many nutrients, they won't use them all, and so you'll still be able to see them there. And I predict, or hypothesize, that we will see that there is no evidence of nitrogen still in the soil, but we will be able to see phosphorus, because we know that plants here need more nitrogen than phosphorus. Alright, let's go have a look.
The first thing we do in the field is label all our collection bags for the samples with the date and a unique ID number. Next, we need to collect our samples. I always make sure to clear away the vegetation, that way we minimize the amount that is included in the sample. Then I push this special instrument called a soil corer into the ground and twist. We want to collect the same amount of soil at the same depth each time, so I drew a line on the soil corer for 15 centimeters deep. Then I back up the soil and move to the next site. I sample a total of 12 sites in this pasture, and now that I'm done, we can pack these up in the cooler and take them back to the lab.
Alright, now that we've got our soil samples, we're going to go through the steps of how to analyze them. The first step that you want to do is sieve your soil, which is basically putting it through a fine mesh to get any big roots out. So you can see, it kind of looks like what you'd put your pasta through. This one's dirty because I already started. So you'll take your soil and dump it in. Now we're going to shake the soil back and forth so that we can take out things like big pieces of grass or roots. So at the end we just have soil. If you've got big clumps, you can push them and break them up with your fingers to go through the mesh. Now that we've got our sieved soil samples, I'm going to be taking you through one sample of how we test for nitrogen and phosphorus. First, we're going to weigh out the soil, and then we'll be adding acidic solutions to these cups. So we'll have one for phosphorus, one for nitrogen. Now that we have our samples weighed, we're going to add a different type of acid to each sample cup to determine the nitrogen and phosphorus levels. When working with chemicals, you want to wear safety equipment like gloves, and we will set our acid to 20 milliliters. Perfect. We'll do the same with the phosphorus and a different type of acid. In this step, we're going to extract the nitrogen and phosphorus by putting the soil in acid solution through a funnel, and just liquid will come out the bottom. And take a look.
Now I'm adding our 2 filtered samples to 2 microplates. Anytime I use a different solution, I make sure to change the tip of my pipette so I don't contaminate samples. I add an indicator solution to our sample, which reveals when phosphorus is present. The color shows a reaction has taken place. I do the same process to test for nitrogen as well. After that, we put it in a fancy machine called a spectrophotometer, and it tells us the concentration of phosphorus and nitrogen based off of the color.
Now that we have our concentration of nitrogen and phosphorus in our soils for this year, I'm going to compare the data to previous years. Thanks so much for watching.
Oh, that was great. Well, so now we've looked a little bit at a cattle ranch in Florida, and we saw a little peek into the type of science that happens there, and we saw that there's lots of space, so there's space for people to do what they need to do, and also space for the animals, the bears, the panthers, all that good stuff. I'm thinking now of another kind of land that also has a lot of space, has some people there, and is really great for wildlife. Now, when you think of the Air Force range or the military, do you think of that and endangered species at the same time? Because most people don't. But actually, military lands in the US have a higher concentration of protected species, of federally endangered and threatened species than the national parks do. Isn't that amazing? When I think of a national park, I think of that as the place where we're protecting animals, which we are. But the military lands have an even higher concentration of those endangered and threatened species, which kind of blows my mind. But just think about it. If you're an Air Force range and you need to practice, you need a lot of space there. So we're going to take a trip up to the Avon Park Air Force Range in our next video and learn about some of what's happening there. So Katie, hopefully our video will work. Do you want to introduce? Katie made this video too, so do you want to introduce this?
Yes, I made this video of Liz Abraham, and hopefully it'll play just fine for us.
So the red-cockaded woodpeckers, they live in family groups, and a family could be anywhere from just 2 birds, a male-female pair, or it could be a pair plus maybe up to 4 of their offspring. So at each territory, we have to make sure that the birds have enough cavities, 1 for each bird in the group, at minimum. The birds each get their own cavity, they don't share. So if a family group has 4 birds, then we need a minimum of 4 cavities. And if that territory doesn't already have 4 natural cavities, we would need to go and install these artificial cavity boxes.
Today, we are replacing 2 of the cavity boxes. The cavity boxes typically only last about 4 years, so we will either replace them when it is time or when something goes wrong, like if there are holes inside, if it's flooded, or the walls have been eroded away by other woodpeckers. The first step to replacing a box is to remove the wood putty from the front. The wood putty is used to seal the box in the tree, so we have to chip it away before we can remove the old box. Next, we remove the metal screen on the front of the box, which is there to protect the front of the box from being pecked. Sometimes woodpeckers manage to peck in between the metal, but it does what it's supposed to do for the most part. Once the metal screen is off, we can take a chainsaw and make cuts in the old cavity box so it can be pried out of the tree. First, we make 1 long cut down the center, and then we make a series of horizontal cuts to break it into pieces. Then we can hammer out the chunks. The hammer breaks apart the pieces, and once it falls apart, we can remove the old box. Once we get all the pieces out of the hole, we use the chainsaw to clean up the cavity. We want to make sure the sides are nice and smooth so the new box will fit without any problems. Once the hole is ready to go, the sides are smooth, the corners are nice and sharp, we can easily insert the new cavity box into the hole. We put wood putty on the side, back, and bottom of the box to help hold the box in the hole in the tree. We also use wood shims, which we hammer along the outside edges of the box to keep everything nice and tight. We do not want this box to wiggle around or fall out. It can get pretty windy here at Avon Park, so the trees tend to sway, and we want to make sure our new cavity box is a nice and secure home for the woodpeckers. Once we have used the wood putty and wooden shims to secure the box in place, we put wood putty on the front to cover the metal screen and help the box blend into the tree. Then we spray paint on top of the wood putty to blend the cavity box in with the tree even more. As we come down the ladder, we have a brand new home for the woodpeckers to use.
So we just finished replacing 2 cavity boxes at this territory, and we're hoping that birds will find them soon and make use of them.
Thanks for joining us today out on the Pine Flatwoods at Avon Park Air Force Range. See you later!
Thanks, Katie. Actually, for a second, I got flustered because I was like, "Oh, I need to turn my camera back on," because I got absorbed in the video, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, oh that is so cool." I love red-cockaded woodpeckers, and the artificial cavities are so cool. Well, we're wrapping up here with this portion of the episode, and we're going to bring on our guests, Liz and Maya, to answer some questions. Final couple moments here, though. I think that when we are considering win-win situations for the future, when we think about nature, yes, we do need nature preserves, like places like where I am right now, but we also need military lands, we need ranch lands. We need to think about not just the pristine set aside nature, but also places where we can find, where humans can work, but also at the same time be good stewards of the land, just like the Avon Park Air Force Range and Buck Island Ranch. So with that inspiring a final speech there, let's bring on our guests. So if you want to turn your videos on.
Hey.
Hi. Do we have any questions? And we haven't really been saying that, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A if you're on Zoom with us. And Katie, do we have any questions yet?
We currently don't have any questions in the Q&A box, but I did have one for Maya. Did you ever get the results from the experiment that you had done?
Oh, I did actually. I finished my analysis last week. It was really exciting. My hypothesis about phosphorus in the soil was correct. So we do see that phosphorus is decreasing since the initial fertilization experiment. There's definitely a lot less than the highest levels that we had at that after like 10 years of the experiment. But yes, it is still in the soil, whereas the nitrate, which is a form of nitrogen, we do not see any of that, which is what I had hypothesized as well. So it seems that the plants used all the nitrate and are using some of the phosphorus, but there's still some left over.
Maya, could you say something about why that's a good thing? Because some people might be thinking like, oh no, the plants are going to run out of fertilizer and all die. Why would we not want to have this fertilizer in the soil?
That's an excellent question. So different areas or just different places around the world have like their plants are adapted to different amounts of nutrients that they would need in the soil. And here in Florida, the soils don't need to have a lot of phosphorus because the plants just don't need them. And so when you have too much phosphorus in the soil, it can run off in the water with rainwater and enter our water systems. And if anyone has ever heard of algal blooms happening on the coasts of Florida, that can be influenced by there being too much fertilizer, because then plants that like algal blooms are when algae gets like an influx of fertilizer and is like, yay, and which sounds like it would be a good thing, but then it can kind of throw off the balance and there can be too much algae and which leaves not enough like oxygen and light for other plants to grow. So it can be harmful for marine environments and other aquatic environments. So that's one of the things that we are concerned about when there is an unusually high level of nutrients in soils here in Florida and also in other parts of the country.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a question for Liz. Liz, could you say something about like, you're up there in the trees and stuff, you're on an Air Force base. Are you worried that you're going to get like blown up or something? You're out there, aren't there jets and stuff flying by you?
There are. So it is an active Air Force range, but we work really closely with the military to ensure that we are in areas where we are allowed to be, where we're not going to be in their way, and where they're not going to be in our way. So we communicate regularly with them in order to make sure that we're working in areas
where everything is safe, where we have all of the information we need in order to stay safe. And that way we're not like crossing paths and interrupting one another, being in each other's way. We also communicate regularly with the Air Force about areas where the endangered species are, where they need to take extra precautions in order to protect the species that are on their property that they work on as well.
Cool, thanks. I saw there was a question that came in about red tide and the phosphorus. I'm just going to answer that one real quick to say that Archbold studies what's happening out here in the middle of the state and not what's happening on the coasts. And red tide is a big, giant topic. So we do know that when we have extra phosphorus here, we see the algal blooms like in Lake Okeechobee and then into the canals. And scientists on the coast are trying to figure out how that part also works with the red tide that's happening on the coast. But it's outside of our scope of what we research. Any other questions? Oh,
could I just add that the level of phosphorus in these plots, it wasn't fertilized very much or for very long. It was because it was just an experiment we were running here. And so the levels of phosphorus in the plots that I was doing wouldn't really have a dramatic impact on like outer areas. But it's more like, what can we learn from this and then apply it to like larger situations, if that made sense.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all we have for questions, unless you had any follow-up ones, Dustin.
I think I could ask them both lots of questions. Maya, I guess I have a similar question to like, what is it like to work on a ranch? Like when you're out there, are you worried about cows coming and like stepping on your research project, or like how does that work?
Very much. Yes, we are. We have one of the parts of my job involves putting cages around things that we are trying to study so that cows can't get in. And then sometimes you show up and the cages are like pushed over because the cows are trying to walk on it. Living and working on a ranch is really incredible. So I live here, and like at night I hear the coyotes yipping and the owls hooting. And I will say it does take a long time to get to all of our experimental sites because it's a 10,000 acre cattle ranch. But we have a lot of different science going on, so it can be really hot and sweaty while you're working out in the middle of a field, cutting grass with a knife to try to see how much it grew. But I'm generally not scared of gators or panthers or bobcats or bears or coyotes because they don't really want to deal with me either. So that part's kind of nice. We just have a mutual understanding. Though I was laying down the other day and got kind of scared of this cow. I thought that might step on me because it was walking up because it wanted to lick me because it thought that I was a like molasses clump. And so before it licked me, I got up.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's all the questions that I have. Did any other ones come through?
Nope, doesn't look like it. So I think, we actually have one on Facebook. And it is for Maya. What are the acids used for nitrogen and phosphorus testing?
It's a double acid for phosphorus. It's called double acid melic green something. It's like you're using like double acid extraction melic green something. I'm so sorry. And
we can find out and we will put it in the Facebook comment section.
I'm gonna get back to you. I can't believe I can't remember.
I was like, are you prepared to answer questions for like 10-year-olds? And I don't think we were expecting that one.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. Yeah, no, I'll get back to you because I do know them. I just can't.
Liz, any final thoughts from you want people to know about your job out there?
No, I'll just kind of piggyback off of what you said earlier. The military, they have a lot of property and they work really hard to protect the lands that they use. And so it's really great getting to work with the military, to work with the species they have on their property and work to protect this beautiful landscape in Central Florida. It's some of the most beautiful intact landscape in Central Florida. So.
And you are also, we should make sure this is clear, you're an Archbold employee, but you're not at Archbold.
Correct. Yeah. Archbold has a satellite office that's based at Avon Park Air Force Range. So there are several Archbold employees that work out of that office. I assist on the red cockaded woodpecker project. I also work with Florida grasshopper sparrows, and we have employees that work with Florida scrub jays. And there's actually Archbold employees up there right now working on gopher tortoise research. So quite a few Archbold employees that work out of the satellite office.
Cool. And I believe that the contract goes to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a whole lot of different people coming together, partners coming together, which is pretty cool. Well, with that, I just want to put a last plug in for summer camp. We had those dates up. They're on our Facebook page too. Registration is coming. Registration will be up probably not this week, but hopefully the end of next week, something like that. Takes a few of us working together to get the registration up, so I never have an exact date. But I'm very excited because this is our first time doing in-person camps since 2019. So sign your kids up, and yeah, have a great day, everybody. Thank you to our guests. Bye-bye.
You,
Bye, everyone.